there's a din that every halacha, every mitzvah we do, we have to have a kavanah to do the mitzvah. We have to know what we're doing. There's an exception about the din of matzah. Din of matzah is a machlokes actually in poskim, in beginning of Shulchan Aruch Mesamach. It's an exception by matzah that if a person eats matzah not willingly, but he ate matzah if it's yotze or not. And the halacha is bola matzah yotze. If somebody pushed matzah in his mouth and he swallowed the matzah, he's yotze. And the halachas form is Mesamach explained because after all, in his throat, he had a hanor from the matzah. So it's yotze. I'm soon to mention a shaila that's still going on today in Eretz Yisrael. Bola morer lo yotze. Adin, bola matzah yotze. Bola morer lo yotze. If you swallowed the morer, you didn't feel the taste. This, I think, in the second page you have it here. Those words. Bola matzah yotze. Bola morer lo yotze. That's the halacha. If somebody pushed your matzah in your mouth and you swallowed, you're yotze. Somebody pushed more in your mouth and you swallowed, you're not yotze. Reb Chaim Falaji, a great Sfarish Chacham, said a new line. Bola hagoda lo yotze. If you swallow through the hagoda without understanding, without talking about it, just reading it quickly, lo yotze. The mitzvah of Sipur Tzis Mitzrayim is to explain and to tell stories, to tell medrashim, pirushim on the Haggadah. But if bol Haggadah, lo yotze. That's a word from Chaim Falaji. So when you have to learn Haggadah, when it comes to Leil Seder, it's not to rush up to Haggadah to get the Shulchan Aruch. It's the more you talk, the more you spend time in Haggadah. And sometimes, you want to tell somebody else, Genug Shei, let's go further. Kol Amar Ba'Reisa Mishubach is write the first paragraph of the Haggadah. The more you spend time explaining the Nissan by Yetzias Mitzrayim, or not only the Nissan, the hardship in Golus Mitzrayim, the more you explain Hareisa Mishubach. So rather rush up the Shulchan Aruch, but don't rush up the Haggadah. And there's a story in the happening now in Eretz Yisrael a couple of years ago. A story this happened actually in the city of Bnei Brak, which is mentioned in Haggadah. There is some areas in Bnei Brak that still have a mixture of frum and fry people. This is a story, there's a Rav in Eretz Yisrael that writes Shailas and Tshuvas on relevant stories that happened. And he said the following story happened in Bnei Brak. He says his grandchild invited two of his cousins to come to spend Pesach. And they were kind of Litvish Bochrim. And after the Leil Seder, after 4 cups of wine, they were tipsy, they were shik already. They were drunk. After the Seder, by their friend's grandfather's house, they went out to the street, and they're walking through the streets in Bnei Brak, and they wanted to find somebody who didn't eat matzah yet. And they found somebody sitting on a park bench, and they asked him, did you have matzah tonight already? No. And the guy got upset. No, matzah, I don't want to hear about matzah. Obviously, they weren't Chabad Bochrim to know how to convince somebody. So they figured the mitzvah. They took the matzah, they crushed in the hand, they tied the guy's hand, and pushed the matzah in his throat. Bola matzah yotze, they pushed in his throat. And he swallowed the matzah unwillingly. And he was cursing them, he was all kind of screaming at them. And they walked away, had drunken and happy. They thought they did another mitzvah of Kiruv. And they walked back to the house where they were staying, by the friend's grandfather's house. And this guy followed them. He followed them and screaming at them, you hurt me, I don't want to have matzah, what you do to me. And nothing happened. They were happy, drunk and happy, and he was upset. 3 months later, he gets a registered letter from a lawyer. True story. A registered letter from a lawyer. You're summoned to come to this and this place with your family. He doesn't know what's happening. He comes to this place with his family, and he sees all his extended relatives are here. What's going on? So the lawyer starts with saying that you know that you had a very wealthy aunt that lived in the United States. Very wealthy. But there's good news and bad news. Bad news is that she passed away. But good news is she left a very, very large sum of Yerusha, in the millions of dollars. And she wrote a tzavah. She wrote a will. She wrote a will, and in the will she says that her father was frum, her grandfather was frum, but when she came to America, she drifted a little away and she wasn't so frum. But the later years in her life, she says, she regretted. She says, the life is not only here in this world to make money, to accumulate money. The life in this world is to do something for the world, for Yiddishkeit. So she says, instead, she had no children. Instead of dividing her money to all the relatives, she wanted to divide the money to her relatives who were frum, who were Yiddish. But she says, how am I going to draw the line? So she says, since we just came from, it was 3 months, we just came from the Yom Tov of Pesach, any one of my relatives that had eaten matzah the past Pesach would get a share of my Yerusha. And everybody turns around, there's a whole group of Israeli Chilonim, Fry people, and nobody raised their hand, and this person who was pushed the matzah in his mouth raised his hand. And they all looked at him, you're a liar, you're the most Fry person of us, you hate that team, you hate the Fuma people. You definitely never do that. You're saying it only because you want a part of the money. So she says, I ate matzah. So the lawyer says, you have to bring me edus, witnesses. So he went back to the house that he remembered, that he followed the two Litvish Bochum into the house. He remembered the address. He went to the address. He looked up, asked the guy, where are the two guys that stayed in your house at Pesach? He looked at them, and he went there and says, remember you did something to me, Pesach? Actually, I'm happy you did it. It's good. Could you come and testify in court? What court? Just testify in court that I ate matzah. And then he came to court, and he said, these two bochim, yeah, we gave him matzah. How? We found him in a park bench, we pushed matzah in his mouth, he swallowed the whole matzah. So now the Chilonim, the Fry people, they got a lawyer. They don't want to lose all their money. They got a lawyer. And what did the lawyers say from their side? Hey, you forced the matzah, that's called eating matzah? No. And then the lawyer was also, he looked a little bit of dinim, and he says, he has the chkira that the Rebbe has in Kudasichas. Do you have to eat matzah behaseba? Is haseba leaning part of the mitzvah matzah, or is it a separate matzah, a separate mitzvah? If I did it matzah without a seba, do I have to do it again? So the lawyer asked him, when you push the matzah in his mouth, was he lying on the bench or sitting on the bench? And all kind of question, all because he was forced to have matzah. So again, bola matzah yotzo, bola moder lo yotzo, and bola hagoda, says the Chaim Falashi, is definitely not yotzo. I don't know, I'm going to go to the order over here. The Rebbe brings, in the beginning of Agoda, the Rebbe brings a question. Shalu anshe kiruan, says the Rebbe. Shalu anshe kiruan. The Rebbe's Agoda. Kiruan is a state, is a city in Tunisia. In Tunisia, there was a very prominent Yiddish Kehillah, very old Yiddish Kehillah, so old that they had connections then. They lived in Tunisia, but they had shilas to Bovel, to the Rabbonim of Goinim of Bovel. Shalan Shekiruan. And they asked the Shaila, why do you have 3 matzahs? Why 3 matzahs? But before that, I'm going to mention a Shaila that's brought down in the Mordechai. In the back of every Gemara, you'll see there's the Gemara, then there's the Rosh, then there's the Rif, the Sefta, there's a Mordechai. The Mordechai, his name was Mordechai Rabbi Hillel Ashkenazi. He was killed, he lived in Germany, he was killed by the Crusades, him and his wife and 5 children. And he asked a Shaila. And the Rebbe elaborates on the Shaila in Likud HaSichos. The Shaila is, the Rebbe said, the Mordechai asked a Shaila, why do we have 4 cups of wine? Why 4 cups of wine? Keneged the 4 l'sheni shegula, v'tzeisi v'tzalti v'galti v'lakachti. Keneged the 4 l'sheni shegula, we have 4 cups of wine. Comes to Mordechai and asks a Shaila. If Keneged 4 cups of l'sheni shegula, we should have 4 matzahs. Matzahs is geula. Wine does not say in the Torah. The Torah says with Pesach time, what do you have to do? Al matzos umreirim yachlu. Pesach, you have to eat meat from corn Pesach, matzos together with the meat, and mother. There's no mention in the Torah about wine. The Rabbanah said wine. So he has a shaila, the Mordechai, if you want to celebrate and commemorate the fall of Shein Shigula, have 4 matzahs. 4 matzahs would be the perfect thing. Why 4 cups of wine? But the Rebbe says in Haggadah, that's a shaila the Rebbe brings L'Kutei Sichos. The Rebbe asked Haggadah, Shalu Anshe Kiruan. The people of the community of Kiruan, which is in Tunisia, asked to Shrita Goin, to Goinim and Bovel, why 3 matzahs? And the Rebbe brings down their answer. The answer that the Rebbe brings down in the Rebbe's Haggadah is that when Avraham Avinu and Sarah, when the 3 Malachim came to Avraham and Sarah, told them, you can have a child, and then they went to turn over Sdoim. When they came to Avraham Avinu, what did Avraham serve them? Avraham told Sarah, prepare 3 saw of Kemach Selis. And make crackers, make matzah. It was Pesach time. So because Avraham Avinu told Sarah to prepare shalish soin, that's why we have 3 matzahs. That's the answer that the Rebbe brings down in Haggadah of Pesach. A second answer that the Rebbe brings down from the Goini Babel, Keneged the Harei Olam, Keneged Avraham Yitzchak V'Yaakov. Very interesting. 3 matzahs the Rebbe says is either because of Avraham asked Sarah to prepare shalish soin, or because of Avraham Yitzchak V'Yaakov. But the Rebbe, this is how order we can ask. The Rebbe should have brought down what says the Shulchan Aruch, and I'll explain the Gemara. The Gemara says a din that every Shabbos we have to have lechem mishnah. Lechem mishnah, double portion, 2 breads. Why 2 breads? Because Friday, the pasuk says, Parsha B'Shalach, the Eibusha told the Eden, tell Moshe told the Eden, tomorrow Shabbos will be no mun. If you want to eat something, you have to, Friday you'll get double portion mun. And the double portion mun was a Friday and a Shabbos. So because it's going to be lechem mishnah, that's why every Shabbos we have lechem mishnah. When we have a Suda Friday night, Shabbos, lechem mishnah. Lechem mishnah. What about Yom Tov? Do we have to have a lechem mishnah on Yom Tov? That Rebbe Paskins, yeah. And there's actually an argument in Medrash. Did the mun fall down on Yom Tov? So we take the opinion that yes, the mun did not fall on Yom Tov. So since the mun did not come on Yom Tov, so we have to have lechem mishnah on Yom Tov. But then there's another issue. Besides lechem mishnah of Yom Tov, Pesach is Yom Tov. We need 2 lechem mishnah. But by Pesach there's an additional pasuk, lechem oini, a poor man's bread. Now a poor man doesn't have a whole loaf. A poor man has broken pieces. So l'chayre, lechem oini means a tzebrach and a shtickle bread. So the Gemara has a machlokes. Lechem oini means to memait. You don't need lechem mishnah, you only need 1 piece, 1 whole loaf and a broken one. Or lechem oini is to add, you need 2 whole pieces plus a broken one. So machlokes in the Gemara. And we pass in the halacha, lechem oini in Pesach means you have to have 2 plus a broken one. So l'chayre, the Rebbe should have brought in Haggadah of Pesach, why do you need 3 matzahs? Because it says halacha, 2 because of lechem mishnah, and the 3rd one for lechem oini. Not only that, the Rebbe does bring down this reason. By moitzi matzah, when we have to make the bracha moitzi matzah, there the Rebbe says that the middle one should be the broken one, because the top one, you have to have a shleima. For a moitzi, the bracha you need a shleima. And then for matzah, you're going to use the broken one. So the Rebbe brings the reason there. Why doesn't it bring the reason over here in the beginning of the Seder? When you make the Seder Shel Pesach, it should have said, you know why you need 3 matzahs? Why you mention about Avraham Avinu? Why you mention about the Gimel Avos? Mention Pashut, Halacha, 2 lechem mishnah, the 3rd lechem oini. And I would like to give an answer. And anybody can upstock the answer. Because I can give an answer that there's 2 pratim in the 3 matzahs. One is by the bracha of moitzi matzah. By the bracha of moitzi matzah, I need shleimus and oini. I need whole matzahs, like every Shabbos I need 2 matzahs. And another one for lechem oini. But why do I have to have the 3 matzahs in the beginning of the Seder? Babos. Why in the beginning of the Seder? I'm not making the bracha of moitzi matzah yet. The reason of the shleimus, the reason of the lechem mishnah and lechem oini, Doesn't answer me why I'm beginning of the Seder. When I'm making the bracha, after Rachza, I'm making the bracha, then I need shleimus, lechem mishneh, and then I also need the lechem eini. So the question is why I need the beginning of a Seder 3 matzahs. For that, the Rebbe comes with an answer. Shol anshe kiruan. You know you need 3, 4. Avraham told him to prepare 3 sores. Gimel the Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. That's why I need the 3 for the beginning of the Seder. I don't know if I should go in the order here. If you go in the order, what says in the paper, or a different order. Let's talk about another word of the story that happened with Alter Rebbe. A story that happened with Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe writes, if you look in Siman Tov Pei Zayin, in Shulchan Aruch, Siman Tov Pei Zayin, the last Siman, there's a lashon of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, a very sharp lashon, with actually a quote of the Rebbe of the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch. This is the quote of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Yesh b'koymis neigin ligmer hahal b'tzibur b'brachot chila b'seif b'leil lisha shel Pesach achar tfilas arbus v'chein b'leil sheni shel Goliath. Says the Alter Rebbe is Shulchan Aruch that Friday Leil Pesach at night, unique. The only time we do the whole year, we say Hallel at night in Shul after Ma'ariv. We say with a bracha l'fonel acharel. And concludes the Alter Rebbe. You look at Siman Tov Pei Zayin, the last line of the Alter Rebbe. Ve'ein noigin came in Medinas Eila. We don't do that. She'ein anu koyden klal Hallel b'beis hakneses b'layla zeh. We don't say Hallel in this shul, not nighttime. That's the end of Shulchan Aruch, which is the word of the Ramah. The story is told. Not such a popular story, but the story is told. Before the Alter Rebbe became Rebbe, he was with Talmidim together, with Talmidim of the Magid, and they happened to be in a city, in a Litvish city. So the Chassidim made up between themselves, all Ashkenaz shul, they don't say Hallel. After they finish Shemoneh Esrei, they say Aleinu Meget Haim. So they made a wink to each other. After the shul finishes Shemoneh Esrei, let everybody leave. We'll stay in shul. And everybody leaves. We're going to say Hallel because we are like Chassidim. Chassidim say Hallel at night, Pesach at night. So everybody, the Rav left, the literature Rav, the Stagosh Rav left, and everybody left. And as soon as the door closed from the last person, one of the Talmidim of the Maggid went over to the Omid and Mizakt Hallel, Mizinkt Hallel. The Rav, the Stagosh Rav, he saw something fishy. He saw something that they winked at each other, and they didn't leave the shul. So he went out of his shul, and he was waiting to see what happened. And as soon as they starting Hallel, he runs back in, and he comes screaming. The Ramah schreit, Ein einem Hallel b'layla zeh. Ein einem Hallel schreit. And it was banging on the table, schreit. And everybody got frightened. The Rav screaming at them, why are they saying Hallel? So what's tut man? The Alter Rebbe went calmly to this Rav, and he said, entschuldig mir. Seid ihr gewesen, were you there when the Ramah says, Ein einem Hallel b'layla zeh? Were you there? Because who said the Ramah came on banging and screaming, Ein einem Hallel b'layla zeh? Maybe the Ramah said, L'davonenu. Unfortunately, Ein einem Hallel b'layla zeh. Alvai will be able to Hallel. Maybe he said it a different way, in a softer way. And he calmed him down and let him say Hallel. So Taki the Shulchan Aruch says, Ein einem Hallel, but Bachsid sagt Hallel. We say Hallel twice. We say Hallel, Leil Pesach in Shul, and then we say by the Seder. The Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch, the Rebbe brings in Agoda, why don't we make a bracha on Hallel by the Seder? Asher Kishonu Tzvos Tzvonu Likri Hallel. We say every Rosh Chodesh, or whatever they say Hallel. Why don't we say a bracha by the Seder? And the Rebbe gives an answer. The Shulchan Aruch gives an answer. Because the Hallel that we say by the Seder is divided in half. The first half, Hallel Kov, it says Yisrael, the first 2 paragraphs we say before Shulchan Aruch. And after benching, we start from Leilanu till the end. We split it in half. Since we split it in half, we don't say bracha. Another word the Rebbe says, in Agoda brought down from Shulchan Aruch, says the Rebbe that unique. Every time we say Hallel throughout the whole year, we stand. By Hallel, we state. We stand and we say Hallel. However, by Seder night, we say Hallel sitting. Why? Because everything during Seder night we say B'cheir, Derech Cheres. Derech Cheres is sitting more than standing. So it's another change we have, how we say Seder night, we split it in half, and also B'negeya, the sitting and not standing. There was a minhag by the Talmidei of the Baal Shem Tov that they would try to come to the Baal Shem Tov, they would try to come to him for Seder. And there was one time a Talmid of Baal Shem Tov that traveled Ukraine, and he was about to come to Baal Shem Tov, and he didn't make it in time. So he got stuck in a small village by certain people who were Amaratzim, and he was there by the Seder by the Moritzen house, and by the Moritzen house, and he came after the second Yom Tov. He right away traveled further to the Baal Shem Tov, and they came to the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov asked, "Where were you Seder?" He says, "I was stuck in this derfele." How was the Seder there? So he tells Baal Shem Tov something very weird. You know, I understand he's a simple Yid, and he didn't learn yeshiva, but something funny happened. When we said Agoda, everything was good. When we came to the Arba Bonim, when it says Tam Ha'oim, he started crying. Tam Ha'oim, he started crying. And I don't know, so the Talmud tells Baal Shem Tov, he started laughing. What's Veinte? What is he crying? But Tam Ha'oim, what's he crying? So Baal Shem Tov says, Erveis Gar Gut. He really knows what he was saying. You think you're laughing, you don't know what he really knows what he's saying. Because in Russian, Tam means there. So when he said Agoda, when he said Tam Ha'omer, he thought the words Tam, Vin, Shamayim, Ma'omer, what did I say about my Seder? And he started crying, what did I say about me? He started crying, Tam, Dorten, Tam in Sham, Dorten, was sagt man wegen mir? In him, I started crying. One of the joyous parts of the Agoda is the Vehisha Amda. Vehisha Amda, the Hisham Labiseinu, we have the cup in our hand, and we say Vehisha Amda. So there's many. What does it mean Vehisha Amda Labiseinu? This held us through the Golus. So the Rebbe says in Agoda, Vehisha Amda, right? The paragraph before that said Baruch Shem Naftachasei. The Eibush says gebenched that he held his promise. He promised us that we're going to leave Golus. He told Avraham Avinu it'll be 400 years. He promised us, and he kept his promise. So says the Rebbe, the fact that we knew that the Eibishter keeps his promise, the bitachon and the Eibishter, that's what kept us through Golus. Such a hard Golus, all kind of enemies that want to do bad to us, but because we knew the Eibishter promised something, we continue that way. The Rebbe says also about Amunah. If you have trust in the Eibishter, believe in the Eibishter, that kept us through Golus. There's also a taich, Vehi is a Shtevis. Vehi Sha'amda, being in Golus, Vehi kept us alive. What's the Vehi? The Vav is Shisha Siddur Mishnah. The Hey is Chamisha Chumsha Torah. The Yud is Aseres Adibris. And the Aleph is Echad, the Ramuna. That kept us alive throughout the whole Golus. And it's a very nice Taich Bachsidim. You hold the cup in your hand. You hold the Kos Shal Yayin in your hand. And you say Vehi Sha'amda. The word that Chassidim would say, Vehi Sha'amda. The L'chaim, the Fabrengen, the Kos Shal Yayin, that we sat together in all the Fabrengens which succeeded throughout the whole Golus, that was kept us through the whole life Golus. How we sitzen mal Fabrengen aim mit Zweiten, don't wünschen sich L'chaim. I'll say a story of the Alter Rebbe, I don't know if it says it in the paper here. The Alter Rebbe, when it was a Talmud by the Magid, he didn't have any money. Before Pesach, the Magid announced that everybody should prepare their cup and come to Seder by the Magid. The Alter Rebbe didn't have money to buy a new cup. So what he did was, they all came to the Seder, and the Mezritcher Magid comes to the hall, the room, the big room where all the Talmidim are, and he walks in there, he says, Ich schmeck chometz. So right away the Talmid says, okay, let's search again. Magid went back to his room, and the Talmidim start searching the whole room again, they find no chometz. And a half hour or so later, the Magid comes back, after searching, and he says again, Ich schmeck chometz. Again, the Talmidim went looking for chometz, they found nothing. After the third time that happened, the Alter Rebbe raises his hand and says, Rebbe, says to the Magid, Rebbe, I didn't have money to buy a new becher, The only thing they had of my own was a glass cup. So I was marking myself to kasher my glass chametz cup for Pesach. Now there's a machlokes Shulchan Aruch if you're allowed to kasher glass. The Ramah says you're not allowed to kasher glass. So he says, the Rebbe says, maybe the fact that I kashered my glass, I was marking myself to kasher the glass against the Ramah, maybe that's what you mean is chametz. So the Maggid says, the Ramah. So the Maggid tells him, put away your cup, and du wirst trinken dalt koises from my becher. You're going to drink dalt koises. When I finish one cup, I'll give you my becher to drink. And the Rebbe drank the dalt koises from the kois of the Mesilat Maggid. I heard the Geschmack of word from Rabbi Ashkenazi, Olav Sholem, the Rav in Kfar Chabad, and he told me that he heard this from an older chassid, a Biala chassid. A Biala chassid that told him the following word. It says in Akdom of the Rebbe Shulchan Aruch that the Maggid had several candidates who should write the Shulchan Aruch. But then he chose the Yivchar, he chose the Alter Rebbe. Why did he choose the Alter Rebbe? Alter Rebbe was the youngest. So the Biyan Chos says there's a Makubal by them. And the Kabbalah is that since, the Maggid says, since the Ramah came down here because of something that Alter Rebbe did, that means that the Alter Rebbe's Psak Din has an effect on him. Therefore, he is the one who's going to write the Shulchan Aruch. Another similar story we have when we say the paragraph Yachol Merish Chodesh. When we start saying Haggadah Merish Chodesh, and the last paragraph says you say the Haggadah when. So again, there's a story of one of the Talmidim of Baal Shem Tov. He was by Seder night by a villager, and he came to Chalamoy to the Baal Shem Tov, and he told Baal Shem Tov what happened over there. He says Baal Shem Tov, he tells him the person with a Pashat Amoritz, and instead of reading this Man Sheyesh Matzah Sumara Menachem Lefanecha, he read the words, and he started laughing, a joke. So the Baal Shem Tov told him it's not a joke, he's actually right. He says this story told that there was once an older bacher, a bachelor, didn't get married, a very wealthy person, a traveler, a businessman, a salesman, and he would go from town to town, but he was getting older. Somebody stopped him and said, one time on his trips, a business trip, somebody stopped and says, what's going to be with you? Your life is going on. You have to settle down, get married, have a family. He says, I don't know about who. So the owner of the kreshmer says, I have in my kitchen a woman, a Yisayma, and she is suitable for you. So he says, maskim only if you do it tomorrow. I am in a rush. Okay. They go to the kitchen, they meet. You masking you're married tomorrow? That's only condition? Okay. So what happened was the chassan, the rich person wanted to have a zikaron where she came from. So he quietly he tore off a piece of the apron of her shmata apron that she was wearing in the kitchen. And she was the chef in the house, so she prepared food. And she prepared the kugel, but because it was a rush, she made a high fire, the whole kugel burnt down. So she took a piece of the burnt kugel and saved it. Passed several years when they got married, and obviously there was money, there was affluence, and one time they got in an argument. And he says to her, you're spending too much money, and so it came to a point that he tells her, I want to show you something. And he pulls out the piece of shmata that he tore off, says, you remember where I took you from? I took you from slavery, you were poor. Look where I took you from. And she pulled out the burnt kugel and says, it was your fault, you rushed me. If you would have waited longer, I would have been something better. So it says about Shem Tov, that's what it says here, the Eden Klal Yisrael. Why do they have the matzah? We were rushed. And they have the bisman sheyesh matzah u'morah mechutonim l'fnecha, when they connect with each other, that's when the time is of the matzah. I want to mention a word. The Seder, the first word of the Haggadah starts Seder. Why does it start Seder? Seder is, even though the whole Agor, the whole Pesach is Passover, jumping, springen, we have to know that even in springen there's a Seder. Even in like the Marash, the Chatchila Riber, there's a Seder also the Chatchila Riber. We know that the first words we say is 15 Seder, Kadesh Urchatz. And there's a Mekubal that who wrote the Kadesh Urchatz? Rashi. And they say that the Rebbe, by his Seder, he would read everything. He would even read also when it says what to do. What to do, he would read it before he does it. I want to conclude a word from the Chidah. The Chidah says, Kadesh Urchatz Karpas Yachas. The Chidah teaches a very stark teach. And he teaches a lesson for the whole year. Kadesh Urchatz. Du willst dich heiligen und abwaschen von alles Schlechts. You want to clean yourself and be a better person. The first rule is Karpas. What is Karpas of the Chidah? The Shtevis. Klal Rishain Pesager. Vermach the Murl. Don't make any comment with somebody else. And then it continues. Aber du willst ja besorgen, you want to say something, right? So first says Kadesh Urchatz, you want to clean yourself, Karpas, vermach the Murl. If du willst ja sagen, Yachatz Magi. Sag halt. Don't say everything you have in your tongue. Sag halt. Yachatz Magi. For what? Because once you're going to start talking and you become a machlekes, moitzi matzah. Matzah means a machlekes. Matzah moriva. Any argument, break the machlekes. Well, register feel like your machlekes design. And if you hold back moitzi matzah, what can it be if the argument comes? Moder koirach. There's going to be bitter for beide Seiten. It's going to be wrapped up with bitterness. If there's an argument, you're not always right. They're both wrong. But if you do all that, matzah koirach, right? What goes after moder koirach? Then goes, if you do all that, Shulchan Aruch, you'll have Parnassim Archova, you have all what you need. And then it says, Sofen, the Pasuk says, Sofen Zov Yoset, Sofen will be gold, become gold, and then you'll have Hallel, Berach Hal Nirtze, you can dine to the Eibishter. Eibishter will help Tage, am soll Zeichen sein Tage, zusammen mit den Rebben, zusammen mit Samir und Schlishi, wie im Herren